Hi, my name is Robert Cook, and I'm a student at JTech, and we're going to go over a basic fundamental vehicle inspection at this time.
You want to do performing inspection is to inspect the exterior of the vehicle. When you do that, you should get the vehicle into a well-lit area, make sure your engine is off, unlock your doors, and anything else you need access to at that time. The next thing you should do is walk around your vehicle. Make sure to observe any obvious items that may need your attention at this time or any other time in the future while you're inspecting. Keep good and detailed notes so that you can find any discrepancies at a later time. If you're doing this, go ahead and check any exterior component or system operations that may need to be evaluated. Make sure the body is in good condition and none of your components like trim are coming off of the vehicle. Next thing you should do is check your doors open and close as they're supposed to do without resistance or catching of any kind. Next thing you want to do is check your fenders and trim. Give them a little bit of a pull and a push to check the stability. Ensure they're on there nice and tight and you don't have any loose fitting. Next you want to check your mirrors, make sure they're not broken, that you can see clearly, the mounts are solid, so that you're safe while operating. The next thing you want to do is check your wiper blades to make sure they're not dry rotted, cracked, or split. If they are, go ahead and set it up to replace them. Then you want to go ahead and check your windshield, make sure that it's not cracked, no stars, no chips, anything along that line. Make sure that it's clean and able to be seen through. Then you want to go ahead and move on to your exterior lights. You want to check your side markers, your turn signals, and if you have them, flood or fog lights. Make sure of proper operation. You don't have any blown bulbs or cracked housings. And that your brake lights or your running lights and parking lights are coming on properly. Next you want to check the tires. These are relatively new tires. They're also off-road tires, so they may be a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. You want to check to make sure that you have a good inflation, you have good tread depth, and you have, as best you can, even wear. One thing I noted when doing this is that my mileage has gone to the point where I need to go ahead and rotate these, so that'll be a project for another time. The last thing you want to do when inspecting the exterior of your vehicle is go ahead and give it a jounce check. That's where you give it a push on the top of both the front and rear bumper. This was performed prior to this video when we placed the vehicle on the lift. What you're checking for is that the suspension moves properly and freely up and down as needed. The next thing we're going to do is on the interior of the vehicle. First thing we're going to check is make sure our brake pedal is working properly. Unfortunately, due to the lighting issues inside the vehicle, it's hard to demonstrate this and for you to, as the viewer, to be able to see this, but you go ahead and put your foot on the brake pedal, give it a good push. It should give you resistance. If it does not give you resistance, you need to make a note of that and put it on your problem list. Next thing I want to do is make sure that my parking brake is working. I'm already up on a lift, but for my manual transmission and most others, we have this style of parking brake. There's also the one that is under the dash on your left-hand side generally in most other vehicles. Make sure that it works. I checked this prior to lift, but we'll go ahead and give you the experience of hearing the sound of it working properly. And there we go. Next thing we want to do is verify operation of the instrument panel engine warning indicators. To do this, you go ahead and turn your keys on to on, and you make a note of any lights that did not come on when you turn the key.
You turn the key on to on. Turn the key to run.
Yeah, that.
Turn it to open your damn mouth.
Shut your damn mouth.
You turn it to open your damn mouth right now.
Run out. Alright, I have no idea where my cabin air filter is. Is that bad?
I'd skip it. I wouldn't do it, to be honest with you. Because that's something that takes time, I'm pretty sure.
And then last but certainly not least, you want to check to make sure that all your seat belts are working properly. You want to go ahead and either with yourself in the vehicle or out of the vehicle, check to make sure that the seats stretch across you and that the belts lock in place. Give them a good tug to make sure everything's working as it should. One thing that was missing from my video was a horn check with multiple people doing vehicle inspections in here and also doing videos for their grades. I decided not to do a horn check, but make sure you do check yours for full functioning safety. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is our under the hood inspection. And the first thing we want to go ahead and do is we want to check our oil. Okay? This is where the dipstick is located on my vehicle. For your vehicle, make sure you go ahead and check the user's manual. Go ahead and pull this out. The vehicle's been sitting for a little while, but always be careful of hot oil. I'm going to go ahead and clean this off using a white towel. And then we're going to take a look at our oil. Not very dirty at all. This oil's been changed very recently. Okay, we're going to place this back inside. And all the way down to the bottom. Pull it out one more time and check the level. We are well within spec. Okay, so we're going to put our dipstick back. One of the other things we're going to do for our under the hood inspection is to check our transmission fluid. For mine, it's a manual, so it'll be done with my under the vehicle inspection, but if you have an automatic transmission, this would be a good time to check. Use your user's manual to find the location of that dipstick and how to check it properly. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check our coolant level using our overflow tank and our radiator, if and only if the engine is cooled off, and we measure our freeze protection level of our coolant. Now, one of the ways we do these things is we would open our overflow reservoir and check our coolant level. It's a lot easier to see in person than in a video. Another way to do that, if you choose to, but it is not recommended, is to use the radiator itself. However, my vehicle is not cool enough to do that, so I will not demonstrate this time. Some of the tools we're going to use to do this is a coolant hydrometer, which is pictured here. Comes with a scale on how to read it, and this is how it looks. Or you can use a refractometer, which will give the condition of the coolant and the mix from a more accurate scale. The next thing you want to do is check your coolant system for leaks using a pressure tester. Again, the radiator on my vehicle has not cooled down enough yet, so we're not going to perform that test at this moment, but it's something you would definitely want to do if you're doing a full vehicle inspection. And this is what a pressure tester will look like. You can test both the radiator cap itself and when it discharges PSI, and the coolant system itself checking for. The next thing you want to do is check your power steering fluid. On this particular model of Jeep, we do not have a dipstick version of that, but under normal circumstances, you would remove your dipstick. This one obviously does not. And you would use a white towel to check the color and condition of that power steering fluid. Check your user manual for the particular condition of yours, for your particular. Another thing that tends to get neglected is the windshield washer fluid levels. Make sure you check this on a regular basis, not just when you're doing vehicle inspections, to ensure that you have enough fluid to operate your windshield washers, because you should never operate your wipers dry, and to make sure that you can get those bugs and any other things that might block your vision off of your windshield. The next thing you should do is check all of your belts and hoses under the hood. Now, I'm not going to go in through too many specific ones because this could take a while, but I'm going to give you a basic overview of what some of the hoses look like and some of the things you should look for. Remember that every engine compartment is different. Every make and model has their own little quirks and different places that you may have to look for different hoses and belts. Make sure to check your user's manual or Protoman as. Another very important thing is to make sure that your coolant fan is working properly. Obviously for this compartment you can see that it is very, very difficult to get to. So we will check that when we have the vehicle on. It has been checked, but for your purposes, depending on the vehicle, make sure that you can, if you can see it, try to do it in that time. One of the last things you want to check under the hood, but not necessarily less important than any others, is to check your air intake and your air filters and replace any as needed. Check for condition of the housings and the ductwork. This is where the intake is for the Jeep that we're working on today. Also, the air filter is inside that housing. We have taken apart and put it back together. It's a very lengthy process, unfortunately, so we're not going to do it for this video, but it has been checked. You want to make sure that air filter has free flow of air and that you have no defects in your ductwork or the housing of itself. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to raise our vehicle to safe, comfortable working height, which we've already done ahead of time for the purpose of this. Once we've done that, we want to inspect it under the vehicle from front to rear for any fluid leaks, any and everywhere that you can see. For our video purposes today, we're just going to demonstrate. We're not going to spend a large amount of time. Prior to hitting record, I had already checked this for leaks. The next thing you want to do is find the tie rods, give them a good push-pull, a little bit of twist, checking for stability on both sides, and the tie rod ends. Make sure you don't have too much play in them. If you do, check your user's manual for adjustment. Next thing you want to do is you want to grab the tire at the top and the bottom, and you want to pivot it to detect any movement in the wheel bearings or ball joints. For the purpose of this, we're showing the tire and the rotor and the ball joints and the wheel bearings for demonstration purposes. Next, you want to check your shock absorbers for any damage, leaks, or wear and tear beyond normal use, both front and back. Also taking the opportunity to check any and all other suspension parts for abnormal wear, tear, or damage. Another thing you want to do while you're under the vehicle is check your brake lines and any wiring harnesses that you can see at this time to make sure that there's no bulging, leaking, what's known as aneurysms, or dry rotting, so that you can be prepared for any repairs that you may need to make at this time. Checking wirings for frays, exposed wires themselves, any arcing or damage that can be addressed while you're under here. Make notes, check your user's manual and ProDomain as needed to make said repairs if you do need to make. While you're under here, since this is a manual transmission, you should check the clutch operating mechanism for any damage. If you have an automatic transmission, which you will not see here, check the shift linkage for any damage. If the transmission is electronically controlled, make sure you're checking your wires for any damage or fray. The next thing you want to do is check your exhaust system. You'll go ahead and check the tightness of the flange bolts on the engine manifold. Examine the catalytic converter. Inspect the heat shields and check the tailpipe for corrosion, and check for looseness in the mounting brackets or hangers. Next thing you want to do is check your parking brake cables. Inspect the handbrake cable to make sure it's not frayed, damaged, or is not binding up. Look for any rusted or swollen cable housing. Pull on the cables and check that the parking brake applies, which we've already checked the parking brake application. This is for demonstration purposes only. Next thing you should do is check your drive shafts and CV joints. On rear-wheel drive vehicles, front and front-wheel drive vehicles, inspect the drive shaft, universal CV joints for signs of excess movements or rust, which we do have a little bit of rust here on our little four-wheel drive Jeep. You want to check for wear, drive shaft to CV joint, rotate the shaft and flange in opposite directions. There should be no movement, which there is not. On our four-wheel drive vehicles, ensure we repeat this procedure for the front drive shaft universals to go along with the rear. Inspect the pinion shaft, oil seal for any signs of leakage. Check the rear shock absorbers for signs of damage and leaks, which we've already done. Tighten the suspension mounting bolts, which have already been checked. Inspect the suspension mounting bushings for signs of deterioration or damage. If the vehicle is fitted with leaf springs, which this one is not, but your vehicle may, check your vehicle and your user's manual. Inspect the leaves for any cracks and misalignment. On a vehicle with independent suspension like this one, inspect the rear strut assemblies for physical damage, signs of fluid leaks, and inspect the brake hoses for signs of cracking or abrasion. Last thing you want to do on the underside is check the fuel tank area. Tighten the fuel tank mounting bolts or retaining strap bolts if necessary. Check all fuel lines and brake lines for signs of damage, abrasions, leaks, or rust. Our fuel line runs here. They've already been checked. It's still good and secure, no leaks. Our mounting bolts are secure and tight, as you'll see in multiple locations. Thank you so much for watching my video on vehicle inspections. I hope it's been enlightening and instructional. Please see any other vehicles that I may have if you have any questions about other procedures that we do here at JTech Institute. Thank you very much and have a good day.